Steve Jobs was a master of a lot of things, right? But his greatest tool wasn't a product. It wasn't a piece of hardware. It was a power so potent that it actually had its own name, the reality distortion field. So let's deconstruct this thing. Let's figure out the source of his legendary ability to literally bend the world to his will.
To even begin to understand Steve Jobs, you have to start with this massive paradox. How could one person be seen as a visionary god and a manipulative tyrant? The answer? Well, it lies at the very heart of his power. So, that brings us right to the big question. Where did this power actually come from? Was it some kind of magic? Was it just raw manipulation? Or was it something else entirely? Believe it or not, the term itself comes from science fiction. An early Apple employee who is a big Star Trek fan saw his boss bending reality with just the sheer force of his will, kind of like the telepathic aliens in the show, so he called it the reality distortion field. And that name stuck, for a very good reason. It was the perfect way to describe Jobs' uncanny ability to make the impossible feel totally inevitable.
To find the source of this power, we have to go back, way back. Let's start peeling back the layers of the myth to find the experiences that actually forged the man underneath it all.
It all starts with a wound. As a young boy, Jobs was hit with this brutal question from a neighbor. He said he remembered lightning bolts just going off in his head. That single moment kicked off this profound identity crisis that would end up shaping the rest of his life.
This experience created the core paradox that defined him. He felt abandoned by his birth parents, and yet at the same time, his adoptive parents always told him he was specifically chosen. So this feeling of being both rejected and special created this incredibly powerful belief. He was different. The normal rules? Yeah, they just didn't apply to him.
And this mindset was just cemented by a series of really formative experiences. At 13, he rejected organized religion. At 17, he took LSD, an experience that he said showed him that reality was, well, malleable. And then at 19, his trip to India taught him the power of intuition over intellect. Each step was another lesson in trusting his own perceptions of reality, and he was systematically learning to make his own rules.
Now, he wasn't alone on this journey. He had key mentors who helped him sharpen these skills. In college, a guy named Robert Friedland taught him how to project charisma and just own a room. Then, at Atari, his boss Nolan Bushnell gave him the final piece of the puzzle. Act like you're in control, and people will believe you are.
So, with this new worldview and this honed set of skills, he was ready. Now, let's see how this power translated into real-world, history-changing results.
Okay, picture this. It's 2005, and the very first iPhone needs a scratch-proof glass screen that, well, it doesn't exist yet. Jobs finds a company, Corning, that had made this experimental material called Gorilla Glass decades ago. He decides he wants it, and this is what he tells their CEO.
He tells the CEO he wants enough Gorilla Glass to launch the iPhone in just 6 months. The CEO is stunned, explaining that's just impossible. They don't even have a factory for it. But Jobs just stares him down and repeats, "You can do it."
And they did it. Corning converted their factories, they pulled off an absolute miracle, and they delivered the glass on time. The iPhone launched with its iconic screen, and a multi-billion-dollar industry was created, all because Jobs refused to accept the CEO's reality.
But his power wasn't just about bullying suppliers. It was also about reframing problems. When an engineer named Larry Kenyon said it was impossible to make the Macintosh boot up faster, Jobs didn't argue about code. No. Instead, he turned a technical problem into a moral imperative. By changing the stakes, he wasn't just changing the goal, he was changing the motivation. And the result? Larry went back to work, and he didn't just save the 10 seconds Jobs asked for, he shaved off 28 seconds. Why? Because he wasn't just debugging code anymore, he was saving lives. Now that is the reality distortion field in action.
The most public display of his power was, of course, his legendary keynotes. But you have to understand, these weren't presentations, they were full-on theatrical events. He rehearsed obsessively, controlled every single detail like a director, and convinced millions of people that they weren't just watching a product launch, they were witnessing history.
But all of these examples, they kind of pale in comparison to the ultimate test of his power, his return to a dying Apple in 1997.
When Jobs came back, this was the reality he faced. Apple had lost over $1 billion in a single year. The company was just 90 days away from going bankrupt. The situation was, by all logical measures, completely hopeless.
So his first move was to impose his own, simpler reality on all that chaos. He walked into a meeting and in a single afternoon killed over 70% of Apple's products. Gone. He argued the complexity and the confusion were what was truly killing the company.
He replaced that chaos with a simple 2x2 grid. He told his team their entire focus would now be a desktop and a laptop for consumers and a desktop and a laptop for pros. That's it, 4 products. It was an act of brutal clarifying focus. And the result of that distorted reality? Well, in just 1 year, he took Apple from a $1 billion loss to a $309 million profit. It was the greatest turnaround in corporate history, driven by his sheer force of will.
So, what can we take away from all this? His final lesson wasn't really about technology. It was about a whole new way of seeing the world.
So what powered the reality distortion field? Ultimately, it was trust. A profound trust in his own intuition. This famous quote reveals his core belief. You have to trust in your gut, your passion, your karma, whatever you want to call it, even when the path makes no logical sense at all.
And this wasn't just some personal philosophy. He made it Apple's philosophy. The legendary Think Different campaign was a public declaration of his worldview. It was a tribute to everyone who, like him, was crazy enough to believe they could impose their own reality on the world.
And so, the crucial point is this. Jobs' final message was that the reality distortion field isn't some mystical, unobtainable superpower. It's a simple realization that the world isn't fixed. It was built by people no smarter than you. And if they could build it, you can change it, you can poke it, you can mold it into something new. The question he leaves us with is, what reality will you choose to create?